Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the very basic do's and don'ts about creating an effective PowerPoint. I'm sure we've all seen tons of very ugly PowerPoints, and we've probably seen quite a few good ones. And there are some common things to do to make them more effective. There's one presenter named Gar Reynolds that I've always enjoyed. He does a really good PowerPoint presentation. And there's also another gentleman named Seth Godin that does a very good PowerPoint presentation. And a lot of these hints are taken from those, but a lot of them we've kind of gleaned from good ones that we've seen, bad ones that we've seen, and kind of like little mini surveys of what works and what doesn't work. There are a few very common things to remember with PowerPoints, and I'm going to go over all of them. But basically, you're going to want to make it big, simple, clear, and consistent. Now, when I say big, we're really talking about the text of the PowerPoint. Now, when you're typing a Word document, you're going to have it in, more than likely, it's going to be in a 12-point font. But as you see on my first slide here, this is Arial 12. That's not going to work on a PowerPoint. It's going to come across as so tiny that people are going to be trying to squint to read it. Generally, you're going to want to stay at 32 or higher, and you can adjust it as you go on from slide to slide. Most of the time, your text is going to be considerably, your title, the text for your title is going to be larger than the bullet points on your slide, but you want to stay away from making the fonts so small that you can't read them. I've highlighted 18 here as being too small. Anything, it depends a little bit on the font you choose, but anything smaller than 18 is not going to come across very well. People are going to struggle to read it. And that's going to cause your audience, if you're actually presenting the PowerPoint to a live audience, that's going to make people tune out. They're not going to pay attention to the slide because they can't read it. The PowerPoint should be informative, but it shouldn't be work form. So you want to make it visually appealing by having your font big enough to read. Keep it simple. Usually 2 colors max per slide. You don't want to have too many colors. You can see I kind of tend to go to the old British spelling every once in a while when I write colors for some reason. But you don't want to have 6, 8 colors in one slide. You're going to stick with generally 2 colors for your entire presentation. You can make your title of a slide a contrasting color, and then keep all your bullet points in one color. You can occasionally use a separate color to highlight, which I'll actually go over on a later slide, but you want to keep the same consistent font, the same style, and the same colors. And there's also, I found this in one of Seth Godin's presentations, it's what they call the 6x7 rule. Studies have shown that you should not have more than 6 lines per slide and no more than 7 words per line. You don't want to try to convey an entire paragraph worth of information on one slide. So you want to keep it to six lines on the slide. That doesn't necessarily include your title. Like I have keep it simple text at the top. We're not counting that as the 6 lines, but when you come to your bullet points, no more than 6 lines and no more than 7 words per line. It just becomes way too cluttered, and that's another way to get people to tune out. As you'll see here, I'll show another slide to contrast here after this, but this little bit on instructional technology, I've copied a paragraph from a textbook. There's way too much there. It's too detailed. If you have to present all of this information, break it down into 2 or 3 slides. People see that they're going to say, "Oh, I don't want to read all of that. I'll look for a handout later. I'm not going to pay attention to all that." So you want to break it down onto multiple slides, following that essentially that 6x7 rule. You can break it down into 2 different slides. When you include graphics like pie charts, bar charts, line graphs, things like that, you have to kind of keep the same, keep it simple approach. Now, we can all see this line graph. We know this is 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. We don't need an individual line for each degree point on that graph. So you would present it, the same information. People can read the same details, but it's just in a simpler, more visually appealing slide. The same goes with graphics. We went over this last night, and for some reason, I'm on a lizard kick lately, so I used lizards as an example. An effective PowerPoint is going to have at least one visual image on each slide, and if you're presenting making a presentation live, you want to convey the image. Let that create that memorable moment on the slide, and let the details come from your words. People could see it. They know what you're talking about, but you're going to want the image to convey a point. You're going to have the image make an emotional connection to what you're trying to talk about, and let the information, all of the details, come from your words. So
we talked a little bit last night too about how people process visual information much faster than text, and so it's really good if you're doing PowerPoints to have text in combination with pictures. Mm-hmm. It makes it easier for a person to grasp the message that you're trying to get across, if there's a picture included rather than if it's just a block of text.
Yep. And when you are using text, regardless of whether you're using the PowerPoint brand software or the Mac version or Google presentations or whatever, regardless of the software that you're using, there's going to be clip art that's built into it. But most of the time it looks kind of cartoonish, kind of simple, and it doesn't give you a very high quality image. Plus, if you're using the clip art that's built into the software, chances are people have seen it 100 times. They're going to tune it out. They're not going to be interested. So if I wanted to show a picture of lizard, I would avoid using the clip art on the left, and I would find a quality image, a high quality graphic. You can find them. There are copyright-free resources all over the place. You can use, I use Google image search because you can adjust your search parameters to only free sources, so you can avoid any copyright infringement or anything like that. Or if you're creating a professional presentation and want to, you're going to copyright your own, you can pay for a high quality graphic. But unless you were like this one on the left, unless you were doing a PowerPoint on ancient Mayan art, you're really not going to want to have that. It just doesn't really create an image. So you're going to look at that and go, what is that? Is it a dragon? Is it a lizard? Is it a cat with a long tail? Is it a possum? What? So use a high quality image. Another thing about keeping it simple is sound effects. There are transitions that you can actually have built in to your PowerPoint presentation. You can have it to where it'll automatically cut from one slide to the next. One will fade out while the next will fade in. Push is where the new slide will push in from the bottom or from the left or the right and push the other one out of the way. And they come with sound effects. You can actually if you look across the top of the transitions tab, you can have it have different sound effects. Bomb sounds, breeze, cameras, explosions, drum rolls, all of these things. Occasionally, it's possible that you would use it, but for the most part, sounds create a distraction. So only use them if you absolutely, positively have to. Make it clear. Capitalization. We all know, we've typed, I do it myself. All capital letters. It signifies that you're mad, but it's also difficult to read. So you're not going to want to have all capital letters. You're going to create your PowerPoint just like you would if you were creating any document. You're going to use proper capitalization. You're going to use upper and lowercase letters. One, it's easier to do, but two, all capital letters is very difficult to read, so you're going to really want to avoid it at all costs. And you can feel free, folks, to jump in if you have any questions, because we're going to wrap this up awfully quick if somebody doesn't stop in and ask a question once in a while. Another thing about making it clear is fonts. You can change your font to anything you want. You can use any font that you want to use. You don't have to stick with Times New Roman or Calibri or something like that. Like, I use Arial for this. I could make it anything I want, but keep it choose a clear and easy to read font. You don't want to. You want to have something with the sans serif. And usually stay away from the serif fonts because they're more confusing. Now you can see Arial. It's nice. It's crisp. It's clear. But if I were to change this over here to Algerian, it gets a little more confusing. If I were to change it to something like brush script, I can still read it on my end, but if you think if this is going to be projected across a big screen, that's going to start to look confusing. So you want to stay away from things like Edwardian because they're more difficult to read. People become confused, and they'll start tuning out whatever you're trying to say. They're going to look at that and go, I don't want to do all this work. I don't want to read this.
Do you guys know what we mean by serif and sans serif fonts?
Margot, do you want to explain the difference between a serif and a sans serif?
Sure. So serif font, basically, it's going to have the curves around the letters. So you can see, like on the Z, there's the embellishments on the end there. It's curved. And sans serif font is a straight letter, so there's no curve. And the reason that they have curves is it's easier to read if you're reading a book. So if you notice, if you have any print textbooks, they're all going to have the serif font with the curves because it's easier to track when you're reading long paragraphs of text, like in a textbook, or sometimes like an article, that you find on a website. But the sans serif fonts, which are the very straight fonts with no curves on the letters, it's easier if you're reading just a short piece of text, and so that's why on a lot of websites and presentations and things like that, you'll see those types of fonts because it's just more, it stands out more if you're reading the smaller pieces of text.
Yeah, and I think it kind of falls in with that the 6x7 rule. A sans serif is good for the short pieces, but like you said, if you're trying to absorb large amounts of text like you would in a textbook or a novel, you're going to want those little curves, those little curly cues, the little feet on the letters. Like if you look at the bottom of the F there, I'll make that bigger so that you can see it. It's got those little feet at the bottom of the F. Whereas the F here, it doesn't have those little embellishments like what Margot was saying. The serif fonts are just more difficult to read on the screen. The sans serifs are clearer. Another thing to try to avoid at all costs is italics. We often will use them to emphasize words or occasionally emphasize sentences, but on a larger screen, italics are shown to be more difficult to read. So you want to stick with your normal or your bold fonts and avoid italics at all costs. Another thing to try to avoid is underlining. That, for most people, when they now in the computer age, they see an underlined fragment of a sentence, they think it's a hyperlink that they can click on to go to navigate to another site to read additional information. And there's going to be no faster way to annoy somebody than to create what they think is a hyperlink, and they click on it and go, well, that doesn't work, this is dead. So instead, you use colors to emphasize. Like in this example here, I wanted to emphasize the word color, so I had that one word come up in yellow. So I have emphasized the importance of using colors. I didn't need to put it in italics. I didn't need to make it bolder or larger or anything like that. I used color to make it pop. It draws your eye to it. You realize when you're reading that color is an important factor that you should be absorbing. Your mind will lock it in and go, yeah, use colors to emphasize. When you're creating bullet points, if your items have a sequence, if there is a certain, like a chain of events that people are supposed to be following, use numbers for those bullet points. For example, it's the age-old joke, how do you put an elephant into a refrigerator? 1, open the door to the fridge. 2, put the elephant in. 3, close the door. Those are supposed to follow a sequence. So I used numbers to show that there is a sequence. You use bullet points, just bullet points, to show that the list does not necessarily have a certain priority, doesn't have a certain sequence. There's no hierarchy, meaning one item is not more important than the other. But if these were 3 things that I wanted to specifically know, priority is the number one importance, I could change it to numbers to show that 1 is the priority, 2 comes second, 3 is the last thing in the hierarchy. But since these do not have a set order, one is not more important than the other, I would just use simple bullet points. And you don't have to, if you look at the actual bullet point, the little dots here, they don't have to be these standard circles. If you click on the paragraph tab when you're creating your bullet points, you have a plethora of options available. You can change it to check marks, little diamonds, squares, everything. But unless it shows a specific sequence or a specific chain of events, you want to stick to bullet points rather than using numbers.
Don't use squares because that's really 80s looking.
It's 80s looking?
Or 90s looking.
Well, got to consider I'm older than the computer and older than the internet, so it's a bad joke, but it's true. I was around when Al Gore invented the internet. Yeah. Don't make me start giggling, Marco.
Sorry.
When you want to use contrasting colors. There have actually been a couple of studies done that show when you're doing a PowerPoint presentation, it's better to have lighter colored text on a darker background versus dark text on a lighter background. And you want to use complementary colors. You can create an effect by using contrasting colors, but you got to make sure that they go together. Like I created for every slide in here with light text on a dark background. It's more visually appealing, it creates a more dramatic effect, and it will usually register in people's brains easier. The contrast to that, as you see, If you use a light colored background, and I've purposely made this one just white to show you, that looks drab, it looks boring, it looks very plain, and it really doesn't look very professional. That looks like something that, somebody would have thrown together in 15 seconds. It looks like, he didn't put any effort into creating that slide. So you're going to want to use contrasting colors, but you want to, 99% of the time, you're going to have light text on a dark background. Now, when it comes to complementary colors, the next slide is going to be the exact opposite of this, but you're going to want to use contrasting colors. Yes, I've used yellow on green. They contrast, but can you read that? No. You can see something is there, but you can't really read it. I've still used a light color on a dark background, but you can't really read that either. And the same is here. I've used a lighter color on a darker background, but these colors don't complement each other well. They don't create any pop. The letters don't stand out. That makes it very difficult for somebody to read. Now, on this slide, these colors actually complement. I can clearly see on each line the text that's supposed to be there. So I've made it more visually appealing by using contrasting colors, but make sure that they complement each other, that they're not too close together, that they don't blend into each other. They actually have to stand out from each other so that your your text creates a clear, concise visual image. When it comes to size of your images, size implies importance. If you have just a tiny little visual image, that looks just like a logo on an advertising website. It looks like a watermark. Your brain is going to see that. You're not going to pay any attention. But if you've got that very same image, it's large, it's bold, it's in the center of the picture, that tells the viewer's mind, this is important. There is data here that I need to remember. It creates a very solid connection to your brain. It says, hey, this is important. This is something I need to remember. So you size them. You can take any image on a PowerPoint once you've got it in place. You can just click on it, and then you can drag it in and out to make it fit, but make it as big as you possibly can. I've actually seen PowerPoint presentations where the entire slide was essentially one image, and that they had put a few lines of text over top of that image. If that's appropriate for your presentation, if the instructions say that you can do something like that, or if you think you want to do it, you can always double check with your instructor, but always use the biggest image that you can possibly use. And most of the time, try to stick to just one, unless you're doing a side-by-side comparison like the earlier slide where I had the two pictures of the lizards. Stick to one visual image, because you're only going to really present one main point for each slide, so stick to one image. Otherwise, it looks way too cluttered. Now, differences. You're going to want to create some kind of difference to draw attention to certain points. Like I said earlier, you don't want to use italics. I wouldn't, if I wanted to draw attention to the word attention, I could put it in italics. I could make it bold, but I'm actually not going to do that. You'll see why on the next slide. The differences, that essentially will imply some kind of importance too. It's going to create a visual surprise. It's going to attract the person's eyes to the point you're trying to make. So you want to use it to attract attention, not distract. So here, differences draw attention. I've got bullet points, but if you'll notice, I've made one of the bullet points a check mark instead of the dot. Whether you realize it or not, the majority of people that see this, they see those bullet points, they go, that check is different. What's important about that? What's different about that? It draws attention to something that you're trying to highlight without actually necessarily having to say to your audience, hey, this line here is more important. Creating that subtle difference in your bullet points draws the viewer's eyes to that point. So in this case, the check mark draws attention to that bullet point. You can also highlight words and have one of those, one word that's most important that you want to draw the viewer's eyes to that one point. Use a different color. Don't make it bold. Don't put it in italics, and heaven forbid, don't make it a different font. Just use a color. The difference implies this is somehow important. It draws the viewer's eyes to it. It emphasizes the point, but it's still clean and crisp image. And use surprises to attract and not distract. Here you see I've created one surprise, one difference that draws your attention. Here I used one subtle difference. Don't overdo it. If I've got something highlighted here, something's different here, something is different in the second line. This third line, I've got two different things. What's most important on that page? What are you trying to draw somebody's attention to? It really just kind of looks kind of like a cartoon. So use the surprises, those little differences, to draw somebody's attention. Do it by changing one word. Do it by changing that one color. Use one color. Don't use 3, 4, 5 different colors, because that becomes distracting. And that's essentially those are the 4 concepts to remember when you're creating a PowerPoint. Make it big, make it simple, make it clear, but be consistent. You can use the templates that are built into PowerPoint. You can use the themes that are built into PowerPoint that give you some pre-made slides. But whatever you do, be consistent. You don't want to have each slide be a different background and each slide be a different design. If you'll notice on each one of these slides, going back to the very beginning, I selected a theme that had that little, I don't even know what that is supposed to be, but it looked energetic and bright. It was like a bolt of lightning streaking across the sky or a comet or something. But you'll notice that's consistent on every slide. It draws it creates a dramatic visual image, and then just kind of blends into the background. It's still there, but it stays consistent, and it just kind of fades itself into the background. It becomes actually just kind of part of the presentation. But you don't want to have a different slide every time. And unless anybody's got any questions, that is really all that I have for this.
Do you want to maybe like start a PowerPoint and show everybody just how you would start a PowerPoint from scratch?
Yes, ma'am, I will. So I've already got one PowerPoint so that my screen share doesn't go squirrely here. I'm just going to create a new one from here. But if you were to open up PowerPoint, this is the screen that you're going to see. Now you can use a blank presentation, which literally every slide is going to actually open up blank. You're going to have 2 boxes, one that says click to add title and click to add subtitle. But I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to create one. I'm going to select one of the built-in themes to show you how it'll create consistent slides. If you want to do you want to have a template with a specific concept to it, a specific idea, there are hundreds of thousands of templates and themes built into Microsoft PowerPoint. So I could say if I wanted to have maybe a sports theme, I could type it into the search and it'll show you, like, say, hey, you were doing something on basketball, cycling, track, swimming. There are, just on sports alone, there are 40 different sports related themes. So I'm going to create a new PowerPoint. I'm going to use, there are thousands of different presentations that you can use, thousands of different themes and templates. But in this case, I'm going to use the chalkboard one. This is the chalkboard theme. I'm old enough to remember when there actually were chalkboards where you actually had to erase the chalk, and so I kind of like this one. But it's going to start with a generic blank slide with a box for your title, a box for your subtitle. For most assignments for class that require a PowerPoint, your title slide is going to be the title of your presentation, assignment, 1.1 for Lit 210. Subtitle, usually going to be your name. And it will come with a preloaded assortment of slides. Like this very first slide, it's going to come with a box where you can have your title, and it comes preloaded with 3 bullet points. Now let's say that you're going to have most of your slides the same way. You want to create it. You're going to have a title. You're going to have 3 or 4 bullet points on that slide. So you could put in your data here. You put in your information. You could have, line 1, line 2, go on, get everything the way you want. And you say, hey, I like that slide. I'm going to use that throughout. If you look over here to the left in this clipboard area, I can click on the slide I want. I can right click and click duplicate slide, and it'll create an exact copy of the previous slide. So then I would just change that to make relevant information for that slide and continue on. I can continue duplicating it as many times as I want to. Let's say I decided, I don't want to do that. I can come back over to my clipboard, right click, delete the slide. It comes preloaded with this particular one I chose because it shows you how you can add titles and charts, titles and images, different bullet points laid out different ways. So let's say you want to use in this slide here, you want to have your bullet points. You're going to put your information in here, information in here. You're going to get everything the way you want it, but you say, well, I don't want that. I don't want that table there. I can select a table. I can change it. I can adjust it. I can also, if I don't want that table at all, I can click on the outer border of it, hit my delete, and it should go away. The box for that data will stay there. So let's say I decided I want to add a picture there to go with the information that I've entered. If you hover over that box, it'll show you the different things that you can insert. You can insert a table, you can insert a chart, you could insert a video. Say you wanted to insert a picture. So I would just hover over the icon for picture, click on picture, and I'll go to my downloads and say, okay, I want to insert this picture of this cat here, and it drops it right into place where that box was. Now there are 2 different ways that you can adjust the size of the images. You can click on one of the corners and just drag outward or inward to adjust the size, or while you're on the image itself, if you look up in the upper right-hand side of the taskbar, the toolbar at the top, you can crop it, or you can manually set the height. So if I say that I know I want to make this image 4 inches tall, it'll automatically adjust the width to keep the proportion the same. Once you've got it the size you want, you can just click anywhere on the image, hold that left mouse button down, and move it wherever you want to. The same with your text box. Just click to highlight anywhere on the box, and then left click and hold on that bar, and you can move the box with the data. So if you decide, hey, I want my bullet points on the right side and the image on the left side, I'll just drag the image over, the box over to the right, and then I can click and drag the image over to the left. And you just go from slide to slide until you get what you want. You can adjust anything that you want by using the toolbar at the top. So let's say I go back to my title slide, and I go, well, I want that bigger. Just like you would in a Word document, highlight what you want to change, come up to the font section up here at the top, select the font you want. So we'll just go to Arial, and then I can come over and change the size to, say, 72. You just change it there in the font section. If you have on your bullet points, if you want to adjust the spacing, it's just like in a Word document. Highlight the text that you want to change, and then come up to the paragraph section. And in the center of the paragraph section, you'll see a little icon that's got the up and down arrows with the little lines. Click on that, and that's got your line spacing options. That's a single space, 1.5, 2, and you can move your cursor and you can look at the slide. The information is changing, the spacing is changing, but I haven't selected anything yet. So if I just move off of that, it's going to go back to where it was. But if I come back and hover over it, it'll adjust so that I can preview it and say, yeah, okay, I like that spacing. I'm going to select that. Then you go, well, I don't want it. Just go back up to the line spacing and adjust it to what you want. 99.9% of the time, you're going to choose to have all your text left aligned. But if you could go in that same paragraph section, you can click to center it. You can adjust it right. Or if you have a lot of information on the slide, you can do the justify, which will, if I had a full line going across the page, it'll actually adjust the spacing, very subtle differences from the very single spaces, and make it look like there's no margins. It'll be just straight up and down, left and right. And once you've got the slides the way you want, just click on File. If you click Save, it's just going to save it into your it's going to save it into your documents. You don't have the ability to change the title or anything like that. So you would click Save As. I would personally recommend using OneDrive. Save it to your OneDrive. But let's say I know that I'm going to be using it in 15 minutes. I'm going to come right back to it. So I'm going to browse. I'll say I just want to drop it on my desktop. And then I would just, that's how I would just save it onto my desktop. And that's that. And if you do have trouble with a PowerPoint, if you want to bounce ideas off of somebody, you want somebody to look it over for you, we've got tutors that would be more than happy to do that for you. Just like you would for any subject, you want to go to, I'll type it in the chat box, but you just want to go to saa.youcanbook.me. And when you go to that website, you click on the subject that you need help with. So in this case, you might be doing this for an English class. Click where it says English. Or maybe you're doing a PowerPoint for a medical coding and billing class. You can click on medical coding and billing, and you'll get a tutor that's familiar with your particular subject. But when you click on that website, it'll show you, for whatever subject you need help with, it'll show you available days and times that a tutor's available for the next week out. It'll be automatic. Those times will be displayed in your time zone, so you don't have to translate it and go, where is my tutor? Are they in California? Are they in Florida? Are they in wherever? You don't have to translate the time zone. What you see on the screen is where you are. So you select the date and time that works for you. Your tutor gets an email shortly thereafter. But the worst case scenario, by the next morning, you get an email with a Zoom link, meet one-on-one with your tutor. We'd be happy to go over it with you.